what I'm going to tell you about now is this film that a lot of my focus in the early days was getting the information and the pictures to be able to make this film. It's not a standard film. There isn't a commentary. It's an art film. And the basic idea is it shows these men's family trees growing over time with historical time markers to give you an idea of what's happening during that time. And the basis of the film, the background to it, is this field. I managed to find the field, which is, and just to say also, before I go further, just to introduce the photograph, this is the officers of the 8th Battalion, the Royal Berkshire Regiment. And it's taken in their training grounds and the camp down near Warminster on Salisbury Plain in May 1915. And one day I was living in Bristol. I'd had enough of doing sort of book research, and I thought, I've just got to get out on the field. So I drove down to Salisbury Plain, and I had it in my head that where their camp was in one place. And I went to the local pub in Codford, and I went to the landlady, and I said, do you know anyone who knows about the local history? And she pointed me to the wife of the local policeman, who talked to me for a bit, and then pointed me to the retired taxi driver who had a book about where all the camps were on Salisbury Plain, and found out I was in the wrong village. And it was actually in a place called Longbridge Deverill. There was a map which showed where all the camps were, and I could find the place. I went to talk to the farmer. He allowed me in, and I walked around in the fields there, and actually I ended up taking a picture probably within 10 feet of where the original photographer was. Because actually up in the background here, you can't really see it in detail, but this is a place called Cow Down, and there's some prehistoric sites up here with some trees, and there's also the curve of this road here. And actually when you move a bit this way or a bit that way, or a bit back and forward, the topography changes. So I'm pretty sure I was almost in exactly the right place. So there I was trying to take a picture, and meanwhile the farmers' bullocks they had their heads all around me, licking my camera bag. But anyway, I managed to get the picture, and that is the background to the film. In the beginning, the field is empty. None of these men are alive. We start in 1864. My great-grandfather was the commanding officer of the battalion, and he was age 50 at the beginning of the First World War. So 1864 is when we start. And as time goes along, and you'll see a time counter along the bottom here, you'll see each of their family trees appear from where they are in the group photograph. So firstly, my great-grandfather, you'll see the trunk of his tree start growing here. And then as time goes on, each of their trees grows from the position that they are in the photograph. And then, as time continues to go on, when they have children, the children come out as further branches on the trees, and then further from that, their grandchildren, and so on. And the thing to think about with each of these individual branches is that each one is a thinking, breathing, feeling life, just like you and me, and just to sort of imagine the phases that people are going through when they're the little branches where they're babies and through childhood and then growing up into adulthood, and everything else that's going on at that time, and to think about their family and how many there are in a family, all those sort of things. The other, there's also a soundtrack to the film, and there are lots of different things on there. One is that each time there is a birth, there is a baby's cry. So when you hear a baby's cry, look out for a new shoot appearing. When there is a death, a bell tolls and a branch goes black. So again, you can connect those two things together. When any of the men in the photograph are wounded, then their branch cants over, and the amount that it cants over is the degree of the wound. And I can tell that quite accurately because, as well as records within the families, in the National Archives, we've got the army service records of these guys, which go into quite, in some cases, quite gruesome detail of the wounds that they received and the treatment that they had. What else have we got? Down in this corner here, there's a number counter which tells you how many of the men in the group photograph are alive at any one time. It's quite easy in the beginning to see because all the trunks of the trees of each of these individuals, you can see them separated. But as time goes on and the branches grow, things get a bit more complicated. And if you look down at the counter, you can maybe spot which ones of the originals are still alive. Okay, so that's the trees and the group photograph. But one of the things I wanted to do was place this in the context of the bigger history, of other things that are going on, so that people who don't know these families can connect into it and see some meaning for themselves. One of the things that does that is there are, for each year, and we go from 1864 up to the year 2000, there is a picture from those that I collected from the families when I was going around. So in the beginning, you'll be seeing pictures of their grandparents, their parents, then they'll appear. If they're in the photo, there's a red arrow to them. And then you'll see their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so on. Up in this corner, each year, there is a picture which gives you something about current events. New inventions, people who were important at that time, books that were written, paintings, all sorts of things which hopefully will tie in with things, and some which will surprise you about when things appeared at a particular time. Each year there is a piece of music, so it's 136 years, 136 pieces of music, and each piece was either written or first performed or particularly famous in that year. Nearly there. Up here is the moon state, and that goes through from full to crescent to new to crescent, well, you know how moons work. And then in the center, you get an idea of the passing of the seasons. So the sun goes up in the sky in summer, comes down again in winter, color changes through the year, and you also see the nights draw in winter and come out again in summer. Now, that obviously sounds very complicated, but once you get used to the rhythm of it, you will get something from it. One of the things I say here is, because quite often when I first started showing this, people would come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, I wish it was a lot slower. I'd then be able to sort of see these things in more detail." Well, the place for detail is in the talk I'm going to do afterwards, the book that I'm writing, the exhibition that there's going to be. But actually, this film does something you can't get in any other way. It shows the proximity, how close things together are in history, and connects things to get together in a way that you wouldn't get otherwise. You just got to let it flow over you. You're not going to be able to pick up everything. There's going to be things coming on the screen that you don't know about or don't understand, but you'll see something about the passage of time. So I would just say to you, let go of the detail, let it wash over you.